All right, morning partners. Well, I'm actually making this video to clarify, or I've already made videos of talking about how to get a Maryland wear and carry permit. I've already talked about the process of what is good as substantial constitute, even though it's really subjective as I don't know what. Now, I know there's a lot of new gun owners, not as much as some other states, but I know there are definitely people in Pennsylvania, DC, Virginia that are wondering as well, when will Maryland become a shall issue state? Because they're finally getting there, buying a firearm and even buying handguns, which you got to go through the HQL license, and then they're finding out that they aren't able to carry it and that they will not get a permit because they do not have good and substantial reason. And that begs to wonder what's going on, what's the deal. I know some people I know have been pissed off about that, and what is currently going on in order to make Maryland to remove that discretionary permit. Because as I clarified in the video, is the way it works is even though it in theory is not meant to be like that, but that's how it goes. If you're a business owner, you do not have to actually make transactions, or you're making most of your transactions through a armored car. They will give you the permit, and an unrestricted one at that. But if you're, what about the single mom that's working at a hotel, overnight, she has to make bank deposits overnight. They'll basically tell you to go screw off and do it during the morning time or find time out of your life. And that's the thing, because we have a right to keep and bear arms, and these are where this HQL has come out, because they think there's two separate rights. And anyways, I'm basically going to talk about the avenues of what will it take for Maryland to become a shall issue state. Now, first of all, there's the executive and legislative branch. And honestly, I don't think anything's going to happen to the executive branch. Do not hold your breath on that. Now, there are some things that Governor Hogan has inadvertently done that will help the long-term goal of this. But as of right now, all of the bills in order to make Maryland a shall issue state has died for this year, and the only bills that have been left are there's one that's going to require background checks, and it's going to be pricey for all long gun transfers. And that's the one that I think, as far as it's going to affect legislation down the road, because Maryland right now is afraid of the thing about purchasing firearms in the midst of this crisis is they're not worried about the seasoned gun owner that's buying their fifth gun. They're worried about the new gun owners that are going to be buying their first gun. That's why they've been trying to tell him to close down the shops, because let me show you the next checks. So these are the next checks for every state. You can pause this video, take a look at them. I'm going to be scrolling down very slowly. But Maryland right now, we are at, for the month of March, 29,414 next checks in total. And that does not include any private transfers of long guns that are conducted from person to person, or even loans at that. So all of these new gun owners, let's see, Maryland is 15,000, then it shot up to 29,000. I mean, these are rookie numbers compared to Pennsylvania. Look at that, 125,000 in the state of Pennsylvania alone. That's our sister state up north. But that is going to definitely affect legislation down the road if you have these new gun owners, because they're going to start to become educated. They'll start to be able to take self-defense into their own hands, because if you don't know about now in Baltimore, they're talking about trying to cut back either the pension of the police force, or they're going to furlough or start cutting some people from the police force in Baltimore. So they're losing this battle, or ultimately we are losing this battle as far as public safety, because they're saying, well, you have cops, you don't need to carry a firearm for self-defense. Then they start cutting the police force. Then the coronavirus is going to cut the police force even more, because people are starting to get sick more and more, as they are the main ones out on the field. So legislative, like I said, do not bank on it, because we're like right smack in the border to DC. New Jersey is too. And on top of that, I believe a lot of these states, not including places like Illinois, California, Hawaii, but a lot of the original 13 states neglected to have their constitution to keep provisions to keep and bear arms, because I believe they were just following the actual constitution that was laid out back in the 1700s. And you'll see, let me see down the bottom. I ain't gonna go through all this, but Maryland does not have any state constitutions to keep a bear arms. That's one of the reasons why they were able to make these laws, the good a substantial clause in the '70s, because they just think it's a limited right that should only be given to a small group of people. Now, so another way to legislate on the federal level is I don't the thing about national reciprocity being a bill being put forth, you know, Republicans controlled the House and the Senate, and they didn't get it through. So, that's to automatically think that, because somebody's a Democrat, because somebody's a Republican, that they are for or against gun control. It's actually, it's Utah could be constitutional carry, but their governor who is a Republican keeps blocking it. So I wouldn't bank on that either. But the main thing is I'm going to be talking about the right now the avenues that are going up to the Supreme Court. And if you don't, if I can find it here, Maryland shall issue, which is fighting the good fight for all of our causes in the state of Maryland, has a litigation tracker right now, and it tracks all of the lawsuits that are going up to the Supreme Court. And you see this second one right here. This Malpazzo versus Palazzi is on hold by the Supreme Court. Yes, we do have a carry case talking about the good of substantial reason. And to talk about what I believe people are missing on the big picture of the Supreme Court is that this New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus New York City is because I was looking through a lot of videos clarifying they think that this case is going to be moot. A lot of some of the left leaning constitutional and art arguments, they weren't looking at the big picture of all these cases they have on hold, and a lot of these cases are actually pretty nasty. We have gun seizures. Is this the one, the gun seizure? Yep, this one's a gun seizure. So he took basically over there in the Ninth Circuit. They saying like, yeah, the police have a right to take your guns, and it's not violating your Second Amendment rights as long as you still have the right to purchase another gun. And then on top of that, they they are making another case that they can put that on hold. So if right now they put that on hold, and they say, well, you got your Second Amendment hasn't been violated because you still if they take your gun, you could just always get another one. So they're trying to do their hardest in order to chop up Heller as much as they can, and they're using something called tiers of scrutiny, which is basically the government or the state's basis of having an interest of why they want to do it, and they want to look to see if it's narrowly tailored. And when it comes to these good reason clauses, especially in New Jersey, because New Jersey, if you look through all of these May issue states, New Jersey is a lot worse than Maryland, I would say, because you have to go through not only the cops, you have to go through a superior court, so a judge has to then approve it. At least in California and New York, they have some type of how would you say they at least honor a little bit that the fact that if you're living out in the woods, if you need a carry permit for itself, to protect yourself, they honor that. But Maryland, New Jersey, Massachusetts is the same way. They don't care. Anyways, going back to what I said is that the Supreme Court is, I believe, is because the thing about the New York Rifle and Pistol Association case that they held it, they won in the lower courts, they won in the circuit court, and then they finally decided to drop it when they was going to take it to the Supreme Court. So they spent all the people's time and money, and I don't think it's about them. It's just I think it was were they able to get up like that? Why did they not use Heller as a good template? And these tiers of scrutiny, I believe what's going to come of this, because they held on it so long, it cannot be possibly moot. I don't believe it is. I'd be extremely shocked if this case, New York Rifle Pistol Association versus New York case, is going to be moot. But I believe they're going to give these lower courts one last chance to get their mess straight by telling them is that you don't use these tiers of scrutiny, you use text, history, and tradition. And if that happens, and that's not even considering that they might just rule on all these cases. I'm not sure how far they're gonna go. And if they don't, they can easily pull up one of these cases, which I'll talk about later. Is we have a case in the lower courts that is working his way up the lower courts, also called Whalen versus Handgun Permit Review Board. He's a guy that lived in the border in DC, right on the border between DC and Maryland, some type of political guy. And he said he didn't have specific threats and he wanted to get it under the clause of self-protection, which I explained in my last video, and was denied. And so they're challenging it. But Maryland South issue Mike Pennock basically played his best card is by saying, wait till the Supreme Court gives ruling on the New York Rifle and Pistol Association case and then see what to go from there. Because basically what their judges were saying is that you're asking them a lot to be able to overturn the higher circuit court. The fourth circuit, our circuit, held up a Woolard decision basically saying, yeah, you got a right to keep and bear arms, you have a right to bear arms, but it must be limited. So they held up the good and substantial reason clause. Now, what I think, and if they get guidance from the Supreme Court for the New York Rifle and Pistol Association case, then they will have a lot more ammunition. Now, this one up top, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with this. Is I believe it has to deal with, not sure if it's illegal immigrants or non-residents, but they could make a decision on that. But I've just never heard anybody talk to that because there's not been an actual case that's I'm not sure what GVR stands for, but they could easily pull up one of these cases. And if they do not do that, they can pull up the Maryland versus Pelosi case. And then Maryland has the choice whether to sit there and fight their last stand or concede in to keep the other states alive, so they can continue tyranny on the people like New Jersey and Massachusetts. Now, also, here is another good thing, because here's what you got to realize about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, out of all these cases, they took the craziest one, which was the New York City one, because there is not a law on book saying that, you couldn't take your pistols outside the state. So, that was nowhere else in the country. You can't take your pistols outside the city. And basically they said, even Ginsburg was like, what is the public safety benefit if you have to have two pistols and leave one unattended at all times if you have two houses? And they had their heads stuck up their asses. They couldn't explain that. They couldn't explain it at all. So I think, like I said, even though some of the justices wants to moot this, I believe they're gonna say you don't use tiers of scrutiny because it should have never gotten like that. Going back to the Maryland cases, like I said, if they win, so either one of those two cases the Supreme Court could take up, or we could win in the Whalen versus Handgun Permit Review Board, and that goes up to the circuit court, and then Maryland has to have the decision to see whether they want to keep fighting this or concede. Also, what I believe could, if this doesn't happen down the road, which is another crazy case, is Young versus Hawaii. Basically, they lost in the district court level because they basically are a no issue state, really. I mean, even though they say Maryland is no issue in practice, Hawaii is really no issue because they have not issued permits within the last 20 years. And you're going to only get a permit if you're a security guard, and it's going to be restricted. Now, like I said, Maryland is pretty bad too. This 0.4% that you see right here, that is probably all those security guards that have their permit is lumped up in there too, I believe, as well. So the amount of unrestricted permits are probably even less. But Young in Hawaii basically talks about is that they basically said that they have open and concealed carry banned in the state of Hawaii. If you don't know right now, they're doing martial law, so they're very tyrannical state. When I believe they have the worst gun laws. Second, just like in New Jersey is a close second. So they lost. They said that they're going to have to do open carry, and what Hawaii is going to do is Hawaii is screwing over California and all these other localities that have banned open carry in the Ninth Circuit because they basically said the court ruled that you don't have a right to conceal carry, but you might have a right to open carry. And they're also waiting for review from the Supreme Court. So if that goes well, Hawaii might be the new bastard child because they want to see if they can fight this all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I believe they will do that because DC did it and they lost. Illinois did it and they lost. And then what happened is that then they brought up their carry cases to the circuit court level and lost there, and did not want to try it with the Supreme Court again. So, which could easily happen is that the Hawaii might just take up, that might be something down the road to check out. But these are pretty much the paths that I believe is going to happen for Maryland to be a shall issue state. I do not think it's going to happen because of legislation. What you have to realize is that these legislators in Maryland are in the, especially around the DC area, because it's very pro-government, are very nasty people. And I'm not trying to say like minded. I'm just saying it's that they, as far as what they want to get done, they would go through any lengths. They do not care how many people are dying, because the 2013 Firearm Safety Act, that was supposed to be like the main thing that was supposed to stop gun deaths. And you see they'll keep going through as many people as possible. They'll keep going, keep going. If something don't work, they'll just say keep doing more of it. So they're not going to stop with this. Best believe that. So your best bet, and this is what I believe, if you want to know what you can do with your part, is this is what you can do. If you The main thing is more people need to start, purchasing and be educated on this. So convince Governor Hogan to be able to veto the bill, send a message to him, or you can go on on the Maryland website to veto the bills currently on Maryland Shall Issue page, that will stop the transfers, because they're going to require, they want, even though they're probably not going to convince Hogan to shut down the gun stores, if these bills pass, then they're going to require you to go do a background check. And then they're trying, which is basically backwards to be able to pass right now, because they don't want anybody in the gun stores. So but they want you to still go to a gun store in order to get the private background check that's going to be expensive in order to transfer a long gun to somebody that, obviously not a criminal. So, like I said, these bills are not designed for the criminals. They did not pass any of the violent firearm acts. They passed the background checks for that one. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have. Just be safe out there, especially y'all in Baltimore. And yeah, definitely. And if you veto, like I said, doing that will stop. Like I said, these numbers are increasing. It may not seem like it, but like I said, these numbers that you see in Maryland Shall Issues page, they're actually a lot higher than what one would think. So this is what they're scared of. They are not afraid of the seasoned gun owner. Like I said, the seasoned gun owner that's buying his fifth gun. It's the people that are going to become new gun owners and be able to put safety into their own hands. They do not want that. They are fighting so hard to stop that. So basically it's a wait and see game. What the Supreme Court's going to do. I believe personally that you're going to hear something by June. And except for the one that's petition file, all of these other ones that are on hold in response, I think they're gonna wait to wrap all of that up. But wonder why the Supreme Court does, like, they've denied writ of certiorari for California's may issue laws over the years, is I believe they do that because they don't have the votes. And now, since Kavanaugh has been on the bench in his previous dissents and opinions, he has stressed that you don't use tiers of scrutiny to be able to make a broad statement, to be able to deny the people the right to keep or bear arms, depending on what it is. That's what I believe this New York Rifle and Pistol Association case is going to be about. Getting rid of this tiers of scrutiny and favoring text history and tradition. Anyways, if you have any questions in the comment section, these are just my opinions. Ultimately, we don't know what route it's going to be, but I do believe that these days of May issue and discriminating against people are going to be numbered. All right. Thank you very much, and y'all have a good one.